live from the beautiful and virtual Jonas Center in Novato, California. KRCN is on the air and presents the Rotary Club of Novato Meeting Hour.
All right, excellent. Well, Chris, thank you for inviting me to give my 5-minute intro. Appreciate that. And I guess I'll start with about where I grew up and a little about where I went to college. Actually, I grew up in San Rafael ever since I was 1 year old. I guess technically I was born in Oakland, but from 1 year old on, I lived in San Rafael, and I went to San Rafael High School, class of 1983. And actually, my mom still lives in the same house that I grew up in, right on the hill right behind San Rafael High School. And then I went to college in Marin for a couple of years, took the economical way of getting an education. Then I went to Sac State and I got my degree in mechanical engineering. And then I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I remember seeing a headhunter gave a talk, and he said, well, if you have an MBA and an engineering degree, that's as good as gold. So I ended up going to Sonoma State to get my MBA. I'm still not sure if it was good as gold or not, but that's up for debate. And I actually ended up stumbling into a career, a safety career. I call myself the safety guy. I started right here in Novato at Fireman's Fund. And then for the last 20 years, I've been at Liberty Mutual Insurance. And basically, it's called loss prevention, which I didn't even know existed when I went to college. But I basically help large companies like Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk was one of my big accounts, like IKEA, Del Monte Foods. And basically, my goal was just to help them prevent injuries and accidents, and got to see a lot of cool stuff and travel around the Bay Area. But as of 2 weeks ago, 14 days ago, I retired. Liberty Mutual, thank you, appreciate that, Jim. Liberty Mutual, because of some of the challenges financially with the pandemic, they needed to shed some employees, so they offered an early retirement package if you're 55 years old or older. So I took that package. So I'm actually enjoying my first 2 weeks of retirement, and I'm already starting to forget what day of the week it is. I'm glad I remember today was Friday because it's an important day. It's the Rotary Club meeting. And also that was one of the reasons why I wanted to participate in the Rotary, knowing I was going to retire and I wanted to do some community service and camaraderie with all of you. So I really appreciate that. So I was planning ahead. And by the way, Chris, can you let me know how I'm doing on time? It's hard for you to tell how long it's been.
A couple more minutes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, so as far as my family, I have 2 kids. My son, Charlie, he's 22 years old, and he is a U.S. Marine. He's in the U.S. Marine Corps. He's down in Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, California, by San Diego. And it's hard to believe in December, he's already finishing his first 4 years. So he's calling me all the time, like, Dad, how do you get medical insurance? And do I need to have credit to rent an apartment? And it's like reality setting in pretty soon here. And then he went to San Marin High School. And then my daughter, who's age 20, her name's Georgia. And actually, it's just me and her live together in my house here in Novato. She went to Novato High School. And she tried the Santa Rosa Junior College for a couple semesters, I guess 3 semesters. But the whole Zoom, this pandemic and dealing with Zoom classes, she just couldn't handle it. She tried twice, and she ended up dropping the classes. So she's now working at Starbucks in Terra Linda, and she seems to really enjoy it. I was happy, really friendly environment, good training program. So I'm happy she found a place temporarily until she goes to college again. And then my girlfriend, Abby, we've been together for 15 years now. And we met the old-fashioned way on Match.com. That's the new old-fashioned way. Actually, our first date was at the Hilltop Cafe restaurant, right? I live on Lamont Avenue, so I just had to walk across the street. Don't tell her this, though, but I took all my first dates to the same place, but she doesn't know that. It was convenient because I was a single dad. I had my kids at home. I could just walk right across the street and to the restaurant. And then I'll wrap it up pretty soon here. Interesting facts about me. So I have Tourette syndrome. So you may see me doing little like twitches or little coughs or blinking my eyes. And I've had that since I was 5 years old. when middle school and high school, it was pretty challenging, getting bugged and teased and, my whole beliefs and negative beliefs about myself. But after years of therapy and just working on myself, personal growth, I've accepted it. And now it's just kind of a part of who I am. So I just find it helpful. I've learned if you just tell people up front, that I don't feel like I'm like trying to have to hide my little twitches. It's just, that's what I'm doing. It's not a big deal. And the last quick interesting thing, about 15 years ago, I wrote a book called Looking for Friends in All the Right Places. It's all about why some people have tons of friends, other people have few or no friends, and what are the secrets to filling your life with rewarding friendships. Has that been 5 minutes yet, Chris?
That's perfect. And,
Okay.
thank you so much for that really interesting
Cool.
share of your personal life. We really appreciate it. And it's been good to get to know you a little bit. A little difficult in the COVID times, but Ed, he searched out the clubs to join and decided to join our club. Jim Spillman as his sponsor, and Frank Bruno is his mentor. And we're just thrilled to have you as an active member of our club, Ed. So
thank you. I found the best club after all searching. I found the best.
you bet. Thank you. Okay. All right. Now we got a special presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Larry Harrison. Larry, go ahead.
Thank you, President Chris. And before I start, there she is, folks.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Chris.
Burning Love is here, and she was trying to hide, but we couldn't let that happen. Well, thank you very much. Today is kind of an exciting day for us. We're going to present to you the results of the Jonas panel team that has been working for quite a while on this. But this morning I realized that there are several members of our club that are new, and since we haven't been together, don't even know what we're talking about half the time with the Jonas Center. So I thought I'd do a quick 2 minutes of the last 15 years and kind of get them caught up a little bit. Bill Jonas was a long-standing member of our club. He was a successful grocery store owner of Roger Wilco, a chain of stores. And at the time of his death, he bequeathed our club $5 million to build a community center in Novato. And for 13 plus years, they were volunteers from our club called the Jonas Committee that looked for those locations, found a success, working a deal, the deal falling through, on and on and on for over 13 years. And it didn't quite ever come together. Finally, in about 2016, there were talks began between the Rotary Club in Novato and the College of Marin, which I'm just going to call COM from now on, and about forming a partnership with an NGO like ourselves so they could become more part of the community. So finally, after a committee working with COM from our club, I was fortunate enough to be the president that year and honored to sign the contract in 2016 to form the partnership between the Rotary Club of Novato and the College of Marin to build the Bill and Adele Jonas Center. We felt it was important to be on IVC because it was part of our community, and we thought it was close by. We could have our meetings there, we could have our events there, as well as the college renting that facility out to other people in our community as well as all around Marin. One of our concerns was, though, that we wanted to make sure, we being the club, wanted to make sure that the people that use this facility realized the impact that Rotary had with Bill Jonas and our community. And so we went forward negotiating with COM about how we could just do that. And just before August of 2020, the COM came back to us with a proposal of offering us panels, metal panels, that our content would be placed on. Now, these panels are not small. We have 6 total panels that you're going to see. 4 of them, are 30 by 40. So you can finish up at the end of this meeting and take your tape measure out. And 2 of them are 40 by 60. So they're not just some small pieces going to stand on the wall. The content for all this, this team that got together in August of 2020, we ransacked the storage area in Novato 3, went through our archives back there. Penny and Mike Morrissey and Zenith Printing all had different materials that they had over the years and that. So to put these panels together, what you're going to see. So I just want to introduce the team real fast. The team, and this is no specific order because you know how my mind works, that it's in no order. So the team consists of Reggie Winter, Christina Stroh, our president-elect, Mike Morrissey, Tony Garza, Ron Harness, Marisa Remake, and a very special thanks to Bill Vespa and Tracy Rempe from Zenith, who without them, this project would have never gotten off the ground and would have never come to fruition with all of their hard work. So thank you, a special thank you to them. One other person, Dean Heffelfinger, is actually the first person that I went to and asked to be on this committee. He's a long-serving member of the club. Dina did agree, and we did have some initial talks, and then unfortunately he had some health issues and had to back off. And Ron Harness was able to step up after that. But Dean, thank you very much for that input that you gave us and for stepping up initially for that. Also, I want to do a quick thank you to all the past presidents who offered up content and all the other people in our club that offered up stories and pictures and everything else that made up to make this panels possible. We're going to go through this, and I just want to let you know that after this meeting is over, everyone will be emailed the presentation that you're going to see. So if you're going to miss something as it goes, because we don't have a lot of time, but you will be emailed these panels, and then you can look at them at your leisure and examine them further. So I'd like our president-elect, Christina Stroh, to jump on in here, and she's going to narrate these panels for you.
Great. Great. So just to second what Larry said, it was such a fantastic group to work with. Everybody brought something to the table, literally. So it was very exciting. So we're looking forward to getting these up on the walls. Okay, so we're going to take a look right now at the memorial room, the Bill and Adele Jonas Memorial Room. So Mike, if you can show us the Jonas walls, that first one, great. So this gives you a bird's eye view. You can look down into the lobby area, and this is the lobby. This is where we do enter into the Jonas Center. Restrooms go off of that in the right-hand corner there, off of the lobby. And we can then go into the auditorium to the left. So when you walk in, you immediately see these boards that are going to be up on the wall. So it's going to be a wonderful visual. We did talk a lot about how to line them up, how they should look, sight lines, the whole 9 yards. So what you've got right there is you've got these 5 major boards. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see up on the wall, all the way on the other side by the restrooms, that's the Bill and Adele Jonas board or panel. So that has its own photos and information about Bill and Adele Jonas. You'll notice, and I just want to show you this on this one in particular, that we've got these 5 panels on the top, but you'll notice there's a line underneath it, and that's it's a timeline. And we felt that would be incredibly important. So yes, we can go on to the next one. So now we've got this first board, and we felt the first board should look different than the other boards because this was basically a This is kind of giving you an overview of what Rotary is. And we are hoping that when people come into this building, you know, a lot of people won't know what Rotary is, and so they're going to get an opportunity to learn about it and then learn about our club in particular. So, you know, we go back in the history here, founded 1954. You'll notice that, I mean, Bill and Tracy did such a gorgeous job with all of the layout. It's clean, it's clear. And we really tried to make sure that our themes are at the top of the page. You knew what you were looking at. So service above self, the Rotary Club of Novato, and then we've got our mission statement, Rotary's mission statement, vision statement, and you've got the 4-way test. And then we also have a QR code in the corner, which will allow people to find out more about our club, and they can access that. And you get more information from there. You'll see that funny little square in the left-hand corner there. On every board, we put a quote at the bottom that we felt was appropriate to the theme of that particular board. So this first one, of course, we had Paul Harris quote, and there we are. So we can go on to the next one. Next one is we divided up all of our panels into what we thought were the most important things that our club does, whether that's the most important thing that Rotary International does or the district. We felt that these were the most important things we wanted to focus on. So fellowship. We felt that fellowship is just absolutely instrumental in the success of our club. And we put on up next to the main topic. So we have our fellowship there. Next to that, we put words that illustrated what we meant. So we make connections. We have ideas as we work together. There's opportunity to make friends and to spend time together. We put pictures and photos that we felt best represented. We pulled from, you know, all the photos that we had, and we felt that these probably represented a variety of our fellowship events and projects and things that we do together. On the bottom, we decided to make sure that there was a description of what we mean by fellowship. So when this gets sent out to you today, you'll be able to read it. You may not be able to read it on the screen right now, but it gives you a good example of what we mean by fellowship in Rotary. And again, we have a quote at the bottom. It's a fellowship thing. We just have fun, which is true. So we can go to the next one. Next one is leadership. We are respectful leaders. We are professional leaders, and we are inclusive leaders. And it was important that people know this going into this club, that this is what we espouse. We talk about polio, and who better than to be the face of this part of the board or this panel is Russ Ketron. So we were able to put that together down there on ending polio. And then again, we describe what leadership, what Rotary does as leaders in our community. We also made sure to focus a little bit on women in Rotary and when did they first join the club. So there's a little section right there in the middle that talks about our first president, the first Rotary, first female Rotarians. So we thought that was important too. We can go to the next one. Next one is service. And so our 3 words, community, action, international. We are people of action. And so, and the word action is such a positive, powerful word that moves us forward. And so in our service, in our community, and internationally. So we put these photos up there that kind of represent where we've been, what we do. And again, another description at the bottom about what services in our club. And then, of course, we have a quote from Helen Keller, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. Next slide, please. Education. So we have our vocational, our youth, and our scholarship. Great photos of who we have worked with in the past and who we will continue to be working with. And again, another description that, the Rotary Club of Novato provides support for educators and students to ensure their Sorry, now I can't read the rest of it on there. Now and in the future. I'm sorry, but you'll get it when it comes in the email for you. But again, showing that education is a very important part of what we do in Rotary. Next slide, please. And this is our timeline. And so starting in 1954 until I believe it's 2021, Mike, you can probably just keep moving it across there because it is kind of hard to read. So we basically tried to find the most important parts of our history and put it on this timeline. Not only does it give you visual, it's interesting visually to have this timeline underneath all the panels, but it's important for anybody that's not in our Rotary community or in this club to know what we've done and how important it is and all of that. So we put that timeline there, and it's going to go along the bottom of the panels. The last slide. This is the Bill and Adele Jonas panel, and on purpose, Tony had this idea of taking kind of a panel within a panel and kind of offsetting it, overlay it. So it has a different shape to it, but I think that's fabulous because it allows us to have something different again visually. And especially since it's on one wall by itself, it's going to be able to take up that space in a really great aesthetic way. And building community. So you couldn't have a better way of building community by having people in our community support what we're doing and donate to this project. And so this board shows the group that worked on this, the 13 Rotary members who worked on this, or not 13, I don't know if I'm saying that right, because it was 13 years worth of working on this. And there is some photos of construction and of the final building there. So that'll go on the end wall by itself away from the other panels. And I think that's it on our panels.
So I'd just like to please just add one more thing, please. The panels, the decisions we made that these panels are to a point in time. So they're not going to be added to, they're not going to be subtracted from. These panels on metal are supposed to last 100 more plus years. So it's long after this building is going to be standing. The second thing is, in order to keep our displays fresher, we are also getting a museum display, which is similar to the one that's in our conference room at Novato 3. And in something like that, we're going to be putting the past presidents plaques, the Citizens of the Year's plaques, as that expands, some of our president's awards and things like that. And as we garner more awards over the years, we can move things in and out of this display here. So that's really it, Chris. Thank you for your time.
And thank you to Larry for leading us in this committee. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry and Christina, and everybody who participated. We really appreciate all your work, and I'm sure everyone looks forward to seeing the email with the information, and especially getting into the Jonas Center and going face to face with those panels. Great work. All right, so we're at our speakers' time, and if you have announcements, maybe just email them to me, and we'll get them out electronically, and then we'll try to take up recognitions at a future meeting as well. So our speaker today is Mike McCarron, who was, until his retirement, the Director of Community Affairs at San Francisco International Airport. He's a graduate of Sacramento State University, and commuted from the East Bay to the world's 24th largest airport with many different responsibilities. He will tell of the day-to-day activities, from terrorism concerns to electrical outages, storms, famous people coming through the airport, and politics.
You see my bio?
Yep, we got it.
Ah, good. All without the age of a 15-year-old kid, so I got that done. Well, first off, thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to you today. One thing not in the introduction is not actually correct. When I was working at SFO, most of the time I lived on the peninsula in Pacifica. I lived there about 20 years. So I had if I hit all the lights green and made a pretty good stop at a stop sign, I could be at the airport in 20 minutes or less. Just especially after I got over Sharp Park Boulevard, I could take the brakes off and coast into the airport most days. It's been a wild ride for me and a great ride, and one I never would have imagined. And so I'll just start off with, I was born and raised in Sacramento, as you said earlier. I grew up in the bucolic suburb of Carmichael, if you're familiar with the Sacramento area, Carmichael in the northeast part of the county. I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm the only one who left town. I was one of 5 children, and I have 4 sisters, so that made me the favorite son easily. And on most days, some days I wasn't the favorite son, but my sisters, my mom still live in Sacramento area, and it was a great life to live. And then I went to school at Sacramento State. As the other gentleman said, he's an ME major the Sac State has a great ME program. I wasn't that smart, so I got into communications instead. And while I was there, I was working part-time at a TV station, the NBC affiliate in Sacramento. And I literally worked in the mailroom, which is one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life as far as learning how an organization worked. I got to meet everyone in the organization, from the general manager to sales to whatever. And I got to find out who was in charge, who thought they were in charge, and who was really in charge. And I found out quickly the person who was really in charge was the general manager's secretary, that if you didn't get past her, you weren't going to get very far. So you had to be nice to her. And she was a lovely woman I enjoyed working with for many years. I also have a master's in public administration from Baruch College at the City University of New York in Manhattan. I got that several years later, and a great experience for that program I'll talk about maybe later. After I left Sac State, I went to the Navy. I went to Officer Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida. The program was called Aviation Officer Candidate School. It no longer exists. It became a financial burden on the government of the United States, so they had to get rid of it. We were a unique program that they would take college graduates and 16 weeks later make them officers ready to start flight school. What made it unique was that we were trained, or military training was done by the best drill instructors from the United States Marine Corps. And their mission, as they said, was attrition. And to give you an example, my class started out with 58 gentlemen. There were no women in my class. We graduated 18, and less than half of those got their wings. So it's a very demanding program. The first day, I remember sitting there shell-shocked, my head shaved, sweating in the classroom, and the head of the program came up and said, at least 2/3 of you will be gone by the end of the program 16 weeks later. And I remember looking at the guy that left me and the guy that right me and said, see ya, because I'm not going anyplace. And I was right on that. I was not going unless kicking and screaming. So I went to flight school in Pensacola and also made Air Force Base outside Sacramento. That was about a 2-year process. I got my wings and I wanted to go someplace far away. So the Navy sent me at least 2 hours from my parents' front door to Moffett Field. And I spent 4 years at Moffett Field flying out of there. We would deploy, my squadron would deploy from there. At that time, there were 7 active squadrons and 2 reserve squadrons at Moffett when I joined there. We would deploy for 6 months overseas. I made 3 of those deployments. The first one was only for about the last 2 months of it. We were in Okinawa. The next one was in 1986 from January through July. And we went to a little place in the Indian Ocean called Diego Garcia. And if you haven't heard of it, you're not alone. It's a tropical paradise, 10,000 miles away from civilization. And then the last one was into Japan. I did a split deployment between Misawa, Japan, which is about 400 miles north of Tokyo, and Okinawa, several hundred miles south of Tokyo. I then went to shore duty and I taught the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York, which was one of the more enjoyable things I've ever done in my life, was teaching at the academy, teaching the midshipmen. And that's where I was able to get my master's degree from the City University of New York. I left active duty, came back to California, and I was hired by San Francisco National Airport. I heard someone say, the gentleman say about what he wanted to do after he got out of school and what his son's looking to do after he got out of the Marines. I understand that panic, because the military has everything planned for you, from when you get up, what you wear, what you're going to eat, what you're going to do. You don't worry about anything, because they're going to tell you what to do. when you leave the military, it's a little shell shock. And I was very fortunate. I got hired by two gentlemen. One was a former Green Beret, and the other was a former Air Force pilot. And they really took me under their arms and kind of shoved me through the airport. And my first job was in emergency planning. I'll talk about this later. But I also stayed in the Naval Reserve and flew out of Moffett Field in reserves. I commanded some reserve units, worked for the Naval Academy as a reservist for a while, and then I retired as a captain, I can't believe 13 years ago now, as a captain in the Naval Reserve. So that's brief of my career. And then I'm working as a communication consultant since I left the airport. I also worked at the USS Hornet Museum for a while, first in marketing and communications, and the last 3 years as the executive director, head of the museum, which is running a nonprofit, and I can verify the museum is a nonprofit, as I worried about payroll every 2 weeks. Was a wonderful, unique experience, and worked with some of the finest people I've ever had the pleasure of working with in my life at the museum. And right now I'm working a part-time job with the Contra Costa Historical Society. I'm the executive director. I love the 8-minute commute from my house here in Benicia to Martinez. And it's a nice part-time job to keep me busy and keep my mind active. So here's some photos of my life in the Navy. There I'm getting my first salute, which is a tradition on the left side there from Gunnery. He's Staff Sergeant there. He later became Gunnery Sergeant Wilkerson. Now, if you'll notice, I'm about an inch or two taller than this gentleman. I didn't know that until I saw this photo because I thought he was about 6'8", and I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized usually when I was looking at him, I was on my face doing push-ups, so he looked a lot taller when I saw him. The next photo is my wife pinning my wings on. If you notice, she's with child, as they used to say. Our son was due May 1st. That photo was taken May 8th. And if there's any guesses on our son's delivery date, you'll be wildly wrong because he was not born until May 31st, 30 days overdue. So none of my wife, our children were time. They were all late and some were very late. Here's the plane I flew in. It's the P-3 Orion. It's now been retired. I'm officially a dinosaur in naval aviation. This is primary mission was anti-submarine warfare. We would fly out vast distances over the Pacific where we were, or the Indian Ocean where I was. We would locate submarines, track them, and if necessary, we could drop torpedoes and sink them. We also could do aerial mining, search and rescue, over the horizon targeting, a very versatile platform. It's now been replaced with what's called a P-8 Poseidon, which is basically a 737. It's like, after comparing, I've been in one of those, haven't flown them, but just walked on them. It's like going from a Volkswagen minivan to a Cadillac, the new plane. So a little envious there on the new plane. Here's a Soviet, we used to do Soviet submarines. They don't exist anymore. They're Russian submarines now. This is a Foxtrot. This is in the Sea of Okhotsk, maybe the Sea of Japan. I can't remember right offhand. This is a alleged Soviet cargo ship. Is actually or they say research vessel with a lot more antennas than most vessels have, so we know it wasn't doing just research. And that is ice. They can tell you how far north I'm flying out of Japan here. And that's Moffett Field from the air on the approach. You can see the Sunnyvale Golf Course and 101 in the front, and there's cars going nowhere in 101, so you know it's late in the afternoon. And it used to be a very busy base, and now it's been closed for about 20 years. It's now operated by NASA and just has a few flights a day. But there used to be 7 active, 2 reserve, and a training squadron there, plus the Air National Guard. And planes used to hum down there all the time. But that's, again, I'm a dinosaur in naval aviation. Some of the places I went flew operations out of Panama. That's the one part of the, I think it's the Miraflores locks, if I remember correctly. This is the last crew I flew with operationally in the reserves. We were in Puerto Rico getting ready to come home from our mission out there. This is the last thing I did in uniform, and it's I'm re-enlisting Paid Officer First Class Donna Lou Morgan, who's a good dear friend of mine. She was in my unit, and she said, before you go, I'd like you to re-enlist me. So I had that great honor. And this is done at the Airport Museum in San Francisco Airport. So here's what I did at the airport, because this is what you want me to talk about. I had a variety of jobs. I had 6 different jobs, basically. The first was the Assistant Emergency Planning Coordinator. And this is when I worked for these 2 guys, the retired military officers, Clay and Dale. And they really set me off on a great career path because they let me work far outside the scope of my job and gave me the greatest support and training and mentorship you could ask. And then airport operations, airport duty manager, I'll go into these in great detail here in a minute. Superintendent of operations of the international terminal. That opened a little over 20 years ago now, if you can believe that. It was 20 years this past December. And I was the first superintendent of that building. Assistant deputy director for noise abatement, a wild job that I didn't expect to ever have, and then ended up doing it. And the last 10 years, 10 and a half, almost 12, 11 years was director of community affairs. So as an assistant emergency plan coordinator, I was responsible for writing, updating, and maintaining all the airport's emergency procedures manual. Now, there is a law called the Federal Aviation Regulations, and there's a section called Part 139, which outlines all the emergency, what you have to do as a commercial airport to be a license, basically to have an operating license, operating permit. And so part of this have to do exercises and drills and train the emergency response people. And that was my job. So the regulations say you have to do one full scale exercise, live exercise every 3 years. And in the intermediate years, do a desktop drill. Well, SFO is a little different because it's part of San Francisco. So we did a full scale drill every year. And during that time there, I was there for about 3.5 years in that position. So I planned 3 full scale exercises. I also did an earthquake exercise. And we worked with the FBI doing air piracy and bomb threat exercises as well. So I got a wide exposure to different agencies, different departments. I worked with the police, fire, all these different agencies, mutual aid from San Mateo County, San Francisco County, the Red Cross, anyone who supported an emergency, I got to work with and got a really good perspective on how the airport operates inside and out. So we'd always try to add a new wrinkle to different exercise scenarios. Sometimes we'd run them at night. Sometimes we have a water rescue because the airport's surrounded on 3 sides by water, a very viable possibility. VIP passenger, we once did a hijack drill where the scenario included one of the passengers being a former first lady. So she had a Secret Service detail with her. So how do you work that in? So we brought the Secret Service in to learn from them and how they would respond. Or better yet, if you really want to get full scale and your boss comes and say, I want you to do this, and you think he's had too much to drink over lunch, you get to blow up an aircraft. So this was done in 1992 at the airport. This is a former 707 aircraft that we'd use for training for rescue exercises. And we had to get rid of it because this area was going to be developed for cargo operations. So the airport director said, kind of, I think half-heartedly, not really serious, go ahead and blow it up, I don't care. So we found some people from Marin County, from Industrial Light and Magic, some pyrotechnicians who blew it up safely so we wouldn't lose control of it. And this became the largest full-scale exercise in the history of the country. We had coverage from around the world, and I was the coordinator for it. It was a lot of fun. Just like most guys, I like to blow things up, and I got to blow up a plane and got to do it legally and safely. When I moved to operations supervisor, that means I supervised the airfield, everything where aircraft operate. And so I had a staff of anywhere from 4 to 8 airfield safety officers. And there was one, it worked 8-hour shifts, 24/7. The ASOs do 3 daily inspections. They look at the runways, the taxiways, perimeter security, lighting, anything operational to do with, as I said, Federal Aviation Regulation 139. So we also ensured maintenance was done properly, construction was done safely, excuse me, and we coordinated VIP and special operations. An airport like San Francisco has a lot of VIP and special ops, trust me. We filed daily inspection reports, and then if there was an emergency on the airfield or an aircraft, we had to respond to that as well, and sometimes serve as incident commander. So good job for learning how the airfield operates. So this is what it looks like from being on the airfield. This is an old photo because that building no longer exists. That was the second story of Terminal 2, and that old tower is gone. We have a new tower, and Terminal 2 has been completely rebuilt. Here's one night watching the moon rise and a plane coming in. And this is a visitor. This is called a Dream Lifter. It's a modified 747 that carries fuselages of aircraft and engines and everything. It was in for an overnight stop. Ugly plane, but it's a very functional plane. And this is a unique event. The new international terminal, I say new, it's now 20 years old, was built to accommodate this aircraft, which is A380. It's the largest commercial aircraft. It's a double-decker aircraft all the way across. And if you notice, there's something unusual about this. There's 3 jet bridges to it. And this is to facilitate people on and off. And there are 3 gates at SFO can handle this. SFO is one of the first airports to handle the size aircraft. And it's configured, this aircraft configures usually between 500 and 700 people on board, depending on if it's coach, mixed class, or whatever.
Wow.
So it's a big, big plane. It dwarfs a 747. It's quite large. Excuse me. Some water here. Okay. And sometimes we have very special visitors come in. I did multiple Air Force One operations, even got a tour of Air Force One because one of the advanced men for Air Force One was an instructor of mine in flight school. It does pay to know some people sometimes. And Marine One coming in. I loved working with the Marine One detachment. Great guys. Semper Fi all the way with the Marines. And then my favorite guys when we come in were the Blue Angels, and just had a ball hosting them whenever they came in. So I moved to airport duty manager, and duty manager is the direct representative of the airport director. There's at least one on duty 24/7. And if you're familiar with the military, it's like the duty officer for a military command. You're the one making sure things are happening. So there's always one there. After the international term was completed in 2020, we then kind of made sure there was one in the domestic side, one on the international side. And during the construction process, and I got part of this when I was a duty manager, we had 2 duty managers just assigned to work with the contractors, make sure they wouldn't do something to shut the airport down, like cut electrical lines or gas lines or water lines, which they did all the time. So, and the ADM also can speak on behalf of airport operations in the absence of the airport spokesman, so they don't have to get the spokesman up at 2 in the morning to come in, which they did anyway. I then became superintendent of the international terminal. This was under construction when I took this job. So I transitioned from construction through activation to operation. It was the first terminal in the United States to build what's called a CUTE system, which is a common use terminal. Most airports were constructed that they would rent space, say United, and they would come in and bring all their own equipment, their own baggage belts, their own ticketing counters, their own everything. Well, this, because it was going to be international, not every international carrier would have a large presence, we would own all the systems, the baggage system, the check-in, the computers, the monitors, everything be airport controlled. And basically the airline would come in, type in a password to get in their home system, and then United's logo would appear on the screen, and they'd print tickets from here. When United was using it, Singapore would come and use that same counter. So it gives us a lot of flexibility, because you look at like someone like Singapore or a Philippine Airlines, they may only have 1 or 2 flights a day. So they don't need a whole counter 24/7. They need it for 4 to 6 hours a day. So we could rotate carriers around. Also, it gives the airport great flexibility. If say an airliner breaks down at a gate, they're not stuck at that gate. We don't lose that gate. We can put another airline at another gate and move them around. So it was a unique system at the time. Now it's common throughout the industry, but at that time it was quite a stroke of genius in how we put this together. Here's some, if you haven't been in, this is the old girl's looking still good at 20 years. These trusses are interesting. They were built at Mare Island, the old Navy shipyard. The big pipes that control those trusses are drill pipe that you use in a drilling rig, basically at an oil field. And they were bent and welded together, and they were so large they couldn't be trucked in. So what do? We put them on a barge and floated them down and offload them on the other side of the runway and drove them across the runway in the middle of the night and then jacked them in place. And they're very, very impressive and fun to work with. Here's part of this is the museum at the airport, if you haven't been there. This is a replica, almost to the square inch, of the original terminal building at SFO from 1928. Some of the exhibits cases throughout the airport, I don't know if they still are, but when I was there, they were the only airport in the world that was also an accredited art museum. They have a curator, whole art exhibit staff, and they have rotating exhibits throughout the building, which is one of my favorite things. I'm working there on my free time or my lunch hour and walk around and look at the different exhibits. And it was just a treat to see all the different exhibits and the creativity of the exhibition staff. I then became head of noise abatement. I said earlier that I wasn't expecting this. Every morning, the key people on the airport staff would meet with the airport director and go over what had happened the past 24 hours and what's expected for that day. If the airport director wasn't there, we'd meet with the chief of staff. And one day I'm in a meeting with the chief of staff and the other people going over the day's events. At the end, the chief of staff, a guy named John Costas, you may know his cousin Bob Costas, the sportscaster, said after the meeting, "Hey, Mike, can you stick around? I want to talk to you for a minute." So everyone left, and he closed the door after everyone left, and I got really scared. I wasn't sure what was coming next, other than I thought they caught up to me. And he started talking about noise abatement and this and that. And finally, he asked me, "What do you know about noise abatement?" And I said, "Absolutely nothing." He smiled, and he had kind of this Cheshire grin, this cat grin on his face. He goes, "Good, you're the guy we want." And they had a big issue with some personnel problems and some other things with the community. And they want a whole new fresh approach to how to work noise abatement. So I began to head a noise abatement. So I kind of reinvented how we did outreach programs. We went from reactive to proactive. In the past, if we got a noise complaint, we'd tally all them up. We'd send a big thick letter to the head of training at United Airlines, say, "Your planes are making too much noise," and we would never hear from them again. So a couple things, what I did was we created a website. And this is in when did I take over noise abatement? 99. Yeah, 99, it says right there. The websites were a new thing, a brand new thing. So I had this contract to develop this website for us where people could track the aircraft as they flew over their house. Never been done before. We created a Fly Quiet program, which was an active report card, so to speak. So every quarter we would say, this was the best airline and this is the worst airline for noise issues. And we'd rank them from 1 to 80, whatever, 1 to 60, whatever many carriers we had. And then we'd work with the FAA and NASA on new technologies and try to make things quieter. What was remarkable about the report card, the Fly Quiet program, was that I said earlier, we wouldn't get calls back from these people when I would send them a letter saying you're too noisy. Now I got calls from the airlines, "How can we move up on your list?" And so we would work with them on new procedures, new technologies, and it proved to be very successful because we went from 3,000 to 4,000 complaints a month down to 300 to 400 complaints a month, so 90% decrease. And that was one of the best programs I was involved with. And I'm very proud of that, and the staff who put it together just did the most amazing job. And many of them are still there today working at noise abatement. And then the last thing we did was we had a home installation program. There's a computer-generated map around the airport which defines a noise-impacted area. And if you're in there, the airport will insulate your home with new windows and new doors and attic insulation. And we went through got the whole area completed. First airport in California to do that, one of the first in the nation to do it. And we completed that program, almost 20 years ago now. So this is a map. It's a little data, but most of it's still pretty accurate of how aircraft arrive and depart out of San Francisco. There are 3 major airports here, as you know, plus several general aviation. And these routes here happen about 85% of the time. Okay. It's called the West Plan, usually is what it's called. And you can see the purple routes are San Francisco, the lighter purple are the arrivals, and the dark purple is departures. Oakland Airport is kind of red and orange there, and San Jose is the blue shades here. And then the Moffett they have down there is the green, and plus all the others. Now, it's a very complicated airspace, but this is what happens, I said, 83% of the time. What this really is aircraft have to depart and land in the prevailing wind. And most of the time, the wind comes out of the Pacific across the bay. So that's why it looks like this. When storm fronts move through, we change the flow. Actually, the FAA changes the flow to southeast plan, and it looks like this. And that's why all of a sudden people said, "Oh, aircraft haven't flown over my house. They haven't done it all day." Well, they have to go in the prevailing wind, and this is the wind changes because it's anticyclonic. I don't want to get in the whole weather thing, but this is the routes and how they fly in and out of San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. Now, it's kind of hard to see there, so I've got another map for you. These are the arrivals and departures out of San Francisco in a 24-hour period. So, but as I said, we're not the only airport, so let's throw in Oakland's and San Jose's, plus all the general aviation traffic. That's why I had a job at noise abatement. So it's a very congested airspace, and people say, "Well, why don't you just move the aircraft over here?" There's not a lot over here to work with, and it's a challenge. And what the controllers do, the FAA, it is an aerial ballet how they keep these aircraft from not colliding. It's really an amazing process, and they do an amazing job. So In 2002, I became head of community affairs. I became the primary spokesman of the airport. So I worked with local, national, and international media, and was permitted to comment on all issues regarding airport operations and policy. Worked very closely with the airport director, the airport commission, and I also led all the community outreach programs. The noise ban office then reported to me. I went to different civic community service organizations such as yourself, your Rotary Club, and others. And I was also an alternate representative of the Airport Community Roundtable, which is a airport noise forum. These are my playmates. I worked with the media all the time. And unlike most people, I like the media. Excuse me, I have a great appreciation for the challenges they go through. And it's a very competitive business, and I don't envy them on the work they do. And overall, from my perspective, as someone who worked with these guys 24/7 for a long time, they do a damn good job, and they do it to the best of their ability. Do they get it right all the time? No, but they're trying. Everyone tries. I can honestly say in all my years of working with the media, I can count on one hand the number of times I thought I was getting shafted by the press or had an agenda against me. And I didn't have the issues. I understand why people believe they're issues, but I'm a big fan of them. And someday when I'm not being recorded, I'll tell you stories about guys I didn't like working with. So this lovely woman is Terry Morty. She used to work Channel 2. She actually now works at the airport in the communications office. She does internal communications at the airport. She's getting ready for, I think it's an Air Force One visit here. Some of the people I ran into during my time with the airport. This one I always show you got to be careful who you hang around with because people may talk about you. So I have one governor, a future governor, a knight of the British Empire, and a bunch of other famous figures. So this is Virgin Airlines kicking off new service to Toronto, and it's good. I met, as you can see, a lot of different people. There's only two people I asked to have my photo taken with, and he's one of them, and I'm so glad I did. I would not let him leave the building until I got my photo taken with him. The other person was Buzz Aldrin. So in summation, there's some good, the bad, and the ugly. The good has great people, absolutely wonderful people to work, a dynamic place to work. It was a miniature city. We had our own police, fire, we even had a medical clinic, public works, always something new. The bad is a city agency. We're the city agency of San Francisco. We're another city department like Muni, not like Muni, we're not like Muni, but public works, whatever we want. So you have a bureaucracy, 24/7 operation. So I was coming to work at different times all the time. Why sometimes it's always something new. The bad side, it's always something new. And the ugly is Alaska 261, which is a flight that went from Guadalajara to San Francisco to Seattle, and it crashed off the coast of Point Mugu, California, Ventura County, and of course 9/11. The last time I gave this presentation, some people asked me about 9/11, and I'll kind of talk to you real quickly about my perspective on what happened on 9/11 and what I went through.
Yeah, Mike, maybe we could hold that until after
Sure.
1:30. We're going to have to wrap it up here.
Okay, I got one more thing to show you here. This is the really good things that happen. I've done many VIP events at the airport, presidents and stuff, and my children never interested. Last month, I announced the dinner table that I had a special guest coming today. My daughter canceled her plans and was with me today and called me every step of the way. This is our next guest today, Mr. John Colbert. Thank you very much. Where is your daughter? So I'll leave it there and answer any questions. I know you're running short on time.